This should not have happened. The milk was already open when I got home, and I live alone. I know that sounds small. I know you're probably already thinking of a dozen explanations. You left it open by accident. You just forgot. That's exactly what I told myself too. But here's the thing, I hadn't touched the milk in 4 days. I was out of town visiting my sister since Thursday, and today was Monday. I walked through my front door, dropped my bag in the hallway, went straight to the kitchen for a glass of water, and there it was. The fridge wide open, the milk carton sitting on the counter with the cap beside it, placed neatly, like someone had just set it down and walked away. I stood there for a moment, just staring at it. Then I heard the floorboard creak upstairs. I told myself it was the house settling. Old houses do that. Mine is a 1960s 2-story near the edge of town, and the wood expands and contracts especially hard in autumn. I told myself that, and I almost believed it. I closed the fridge slowly. I put the cap back on the milk and placed the carton inside. My hands weren't shaking yet. Not yet. I walked to the bottom of the stairs and looked up, and the hallway up there was completely dark. The light at the top of the stairs was off, and I knew I had left it on. I always leave it on when I go away. There's a small timer built into the socket, set to come on at dusk and stay on until midnight. I set it years ago so I wouldn't come home to a dark house. It had never failed. Not once. I stood at the bottom of those stairs and listened, and the house was perfectly quiet. Then I went up. I checked every room methodically. The bathroom, the guest room, my office, my bedroom. Every door was open. Every room was empty. Everything was where it should be. But there was something in my bedroom that I almost missed. Something so small I nearly walked past it. The blinds. The blinds on the window above my bed were turned the wrong direction. I always close them with the slats angled downward so they overlap and block the light from the street below. These were angled upward. Not dramatically, just enough so that anyone standing on the pavement outside could tilt their eyes and see directly into the room. See the bed? See whoever was sleeping in it? I adjusted them and told myself I must have just done them differently. Before I left, I told myself a lot of things that first week. The thing about living alone is that you become very familiar with the sounds your house makes. You know which step on the stairs creaks and which doesn't. You know the hum the refrigerator makes just before the ice maker drops. You know the way the wind hits the side of the house and makes the kitchen window rattle slightly in its frame. You know all of it so well that it fades into background noise, something your brain processes and dismisses automatically. That familiarity, that deep knowledge of your own space, is supposed to make you feel safe. It's supposed to mean that anything out of place will stand out immediately. What I didn't understand then, what I understand completely now, is that familiarity also makes you blind. You stop really looking. You stop really listening. Your brain fills in the expected picture without making you confirm it. Someone who understood that could use it. Someone patient enough, careful enough, quiet enough, could exist inside that blind spot for a very long time before you noticed even a single thing. I unpacked. I made dinner. I watched something on my laptop and went to bed at a reasonable hour, and I slept fine. Mostly because I was exhausted from the drive, and because I genuinely believed my own explanations. Open fridge, I must have grabbed something before. I left and got distracted. Dead timer light, it probably finally gave out. Wrong blinds, just a habit I'd changed without noticing. Everything had a reason. Everything made sense if you looked at it from the right angle. The second night changed that. I Woke at 2 in the morning because the bathroom light was on. I want you to understand something about me. I have a small thing about lights. I check them before bed, every single one, every single night. It started when I was growing up with a father who'd absolutely lose his mind over the electricity bill, and the habit stuck. It's not a compulsion, it's just part of my routine, same as brushing my teeth. When I went to sleep that night, every light in the house was off. I had checked. I remember checking. I lay in the dark, looking at the strip of yellow light coming from under the bathroom door, and the only clear thought in my head was, I did not leave that on. I got up. I crossed the room. I pushed the bathroom door open slowly. Nobody was there. The room was empty. The window was latched. The shower curtain was pulled fully back. Everything normal. Everything fine. But on the edge of the sink in the pail, film of condensation on the ceramic, there was a handprint. One hand. Smaller than mine, the fingers slightly spread, pressed firmly against the rim of the sink as though someone had gripped it and leaned forward to look at themselves in the mirror. I turned the cold tap on and held my hand under the water until it went numb. Then I washed the print away. Then I stood there in the bathroom for a long time, listening. The house was quiet. I did not sleep again that night. The next day I called my sister, but I didn't tell her everything. I just said I was feeling off, a little anxious, that the house was getting to me. She laughed and said I'd always been the dramatic one. She wasn't wrong. I've had an overactive imagination my whole life. I'm the person who hears a creak and immediately builds a whole scenario in their head. I've talked myself out of things before. I told myself I was doing it again. I went to work, came home, cooked dinner, went to bed, normal, fine, at 11:43 at night. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a push notification from my home security app. I have one camera in the living room, one of those small white ones you mount near the ceiling. I set it up about a year ago, mostly for when I travel, and it had almost never gone off. Twice, maybe 3 times, always because my cat walked through the frame. My cat, by the way, had been staying at my sister's since Thursday. She loves him and always takes him when I go away. The notification said, "Motion detected living room." I opened the app and went to the live feed. The screen was black dot, not dim, not poorly lit. Black, like the lens had been covered. Not like a dark room, there's always some ambient light. Always a little something from the streetlights through the curtains. This was pure black, total blackness, like someone was standing directly in front of the camera with their body or their hand pressed flat against the lens so that absolutely nothing could get through. I lay completely still and watched that black screen. Then, after about 15 seconds, it came back. The living room appeared in the soft gray of night vision. The couch, the coffee table, the curtains hanging still. Everything exactly as I'd left it. Empty. Perfectly, completely empty. I checked the recorded clip. 12 seconds of nothing. 12 seconds of deliberate, intentional blackness. And when I scrolled back through the history, I found more clips. I had never been alerted to older ones. Going back over 2 weeks, every single one the same, 10, 12, 15 seconds of the lens blocked, always after midnight. 6 separate incidents, 6 separate nights when someone had walked through my living room while I was asleep in the room directly above them. I put a chair under the bedroom door handle and sat on the edge of the bed until morning. I want to explain how that actually feels, because I don't think you can understand it unless you've been there. It's not just fear. Fear is fast. It hits you and it passes. What I felt sitting on the edge of that bed was quieter and far worse. It was the feeling of looking back over your shoulder at all the nights you thought you were alone and realizing you may not have been. It was every small, dismissible thing suddenly rearranging in your mind into a shape you didn't want to see. The open milk, the wrong blinds, the bathroom light, the handprint, 6 clips, 6 nights. And I had slept through all of it. I had come downstairs every morning, made coffee, read my phone, gone to work, and somewhere in the dark the night before, someone had been in my house. On the 4th day, I found the notebook. It was on the shelf in my office, wedged between 2 books I hadn't touched in years. Small, dark green cover, completely blank on the outside. I found it because I was going through every room carefully, really looking, pulling things out and checking every corner. If I had just walked in and glanced around, I never would have spotted it. But I pulled it off the shelf and held it, and the first page was blank, and the second page was a list. Just times, that's all. No dates, no names, no explanation. Just times written in neat, careful handwriting. 12 entries spread across what seemed to be about 3 weeks. Every single one between midnight and 4 in the morning. The last entry was a Tuesday, at 2:17 a.m.a. I had been home that Tuesday. I had been asleep in my bed while someone sat inside my house at 2:17 in the morning and calmly wrote down the time. I sat on the floor of my office and I couldn't get up. My legs just wouldn't cooperate. I sat there with the notebook in my hands and stared at the wall and tried to make my breathing come out at a normal pace because it wasn't doing that on its own anymore. I thought about calling the police right then, sitting on that floor with the notebook in my lap. I had my phone in my hand. My thumb was hovering over the keypad, but I kept coming back to the same problem. What would I say? Someone left a notebook on my shelf with a list of nighttime hours in it. That wasn't illegal. That wasn't even provably sinister without context. I could already hear the polite skepticism in the officer's voice, the gentle suggestion that maybe I'd left it there myself, maybe a friend had been in the house, maybe I was under some stress and misremembering things. I had talked myself out of calling twice before. I almost did it a 3rd time. Then I went downstairs and I heard the breathing. And I didn't need to talk myself into anything after that. Then I went downstairs. I still don't fully understand why. Some deep, stubborn part of me wanted the rational version, the one where all of this was still somehow my fault or my imagination. I stood in the kitchen and I looked around slowly, and that's when I noticed the vent cover on the far wall. It was not flush against the wall, not dramatically off, maybe a centimeter, maybe a little more. It's the kind of gap you would never catch unless you were standing in exactly the right position with the light hitting the wall at exactly the right angle. I had walked past it every single day and never once noticed. I walked toward it and I heard breathing, soft, controlled, deliberate breathing. From inside the wall, I have never moved as fast as I moved in that moment. I was through the front door and across the street before I even consciously decided to run. I was standing on my neighbor's lawn in my socks, shaking so hard I dropped my phone twice before I could get the screen unlocked. I called the police and I stood there on that lawn. And I stared at the front of my house and I did not go back inside. 2 officers arrived within 6 minutes. They swept every room and came back to the kitchen and looked at the vent cover. And they looked at each other, and one of them pulled it away from the wall with a gloved hand. Behind it was a crawl space, long and low, running nearly the full length at the ground floor, built for electrical access during original construction and supposedly sealed off decades ago. But it hadn't stayed sealed. Someone had cut through the interior panel. The edges of the cut were smooth and clean. This had been done carefully, with time and patience, not in a hurry. Inside the space, there were signs of extended use. A worn patch on the raw floorboards where something had rested consistently in the same spot. Faint drag marks in the dust, a slight compression in one corner. And placed neatly against the far wall, a small battery-powered camping lantern, the compact kind, switched off, lying on its side. The battery was still warm. Whoever it was had left within the last hour, possibly while I was upstairs with the officers searching the rest of the house, possibly while I was still on the neighbor's lawn shaking and staring at the front door. They found a second notebook on my kitchen counter. Same cover, same handwriting, same quiet lists of times. The officer who found it stood next to the counter. For a long moment before he said anything. Then he spoke to me quietly and asked me to wait outside. I don't know how long that second notebook had been there. I don't know if it was on the counter when I first walked in 4 days ago or if it appeared more recently. That's something nobody warns you about when you're in that situation. You think finding the truth brings relief. You think once someone in a uniform confirms that yes, it was real, yes, someone was in your house, the worst part is over. It is in single quotes, because knowing only opens more questions. How long before the notebook started? The records went back 3 weeks. But what if this had been happening for far longer and the notebook was something new, a change in behavior, something escalating? I had lived in that house for 4 years. 4 years of nights. 4 years of mornings where I'd woken up with a vague, unplaced feeling of unease that I'd shrugged off and moved past. 4 years of small sounds I'd explained away. I couldn't stop lying in that crawl space in my head, looking up through the floorboards at myself sleeping, watching myself go about my life without the slightest idea. They never found who it was. No. Fingerprints in the crawl space or on either notebook. No usable DNA. The camera footage showed 6 lens-blocking incidents across 3 weeks. But whoever did it always approached and exited from the one angle the camera couldn't reach. The, narrow blind spot to the left of the frame. They had studied the camera's position. They had mapped exactly how far left to stay invisible. They had studied everything about my house. They had studied me. The funny thing about that, the thing I keep coming back to, is that I can't tell you exactly when the fear became permanent. It doesn't happen in a single moment. It happens the way rust happens, slow, invisible, and then suddenly everywhere. There's a night where you get up to use the bathroom and you pause in the dark hallway for just a second before stepping out. Just a reflex, just a quick listen. And then it's every night. And then it's every room, every doorway, every window. Before you sleep. And you tell yourself it's just temporary, just until things feel normal again, but you don't actually believe that. Somewhere in your body, at a level deeper than thought, you've already accepted that normal is gone. That some version of you that trusted your own home no longer exists. I moved out 23 days later. I took what mattered and left and didn't look back when I drove away. I found a newer building across the city, the kind with a secured entrance and neighbors on every side and no crawl spaces, no old vents, no hidden construction access. I had the locks changed the day I moved in. I had a building inspector walk every inch of the unit with me. New cameras, better ones, tamper, alerts enabled. I checked every vent, every panel, every seam in the walls. I checked the blinds position. I checked the fridge and the counter and the bathroom light before I went to sleep. I bought a new deadbolt the second day, then a door bar for the bedroom. then a window alarm for every window on the ground floor. I stood in the hardware store, holding a motion sensor light, and genuinely could not tell if I was being smart and cautious or if I had already crossed some line into something that wasn't going to help me. The man at the register looked at the pile of locks and sensors and asked if I was moving into a rough neighborhood. I said something like, "Yeah, sort of." He nodded like he understood. He had no idea. The first night, I slept 10 hours and woke up in bright light and just lay there breathing. I told myself it was over for 8 straight days. Every morning I woke up and the apartment was quiet and safe and mine, and I could feel the knot in my chest slowly loosening, slowly trusting the silence again. Last night I came home from work and the milk was on the kitchen counter, cap off, placed neatly beside the carton. Not spilled, not dropped. Set down deliberately. I don't own any milk. I have not bought milk once since I moved in. I'm standing in the front hallway right now. I haven't moved since I saw it. I haven't checked the other rooms yet. I haven't looked at the camera feed. I'm standing completely still with my keys still in my hand, and some part of me understands, in a way I can't fully put into words, that looking at that feed is going to show me something I am not ready to see. But I can hear the floorboards in the room ahead of me, slow, careful, like someone who has had a lot of practice at being quiet. And I think you already know this house isn't settling.